We're live, Paul.
Did I freeze? All right. Sports Bet betting insight today. Pauly and Teddy, SBR picks. I'm at Real Sports Bet on Twitter. He's at Teddy_covers. All the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. Football Friday. We'll run through the NFL coming up. Some good tidbits, some good trends as well. And Teddy will explain the right move in London. Also, Nigel Seeley just came to visit from London. I'll let you know about the weather and if they're concerned about the field coming up. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Thursday night, over 40.5 up to 42.5. A rout. 2 defensive touchdowns for the Broncos. Arizona's a debacle. What a shit show that is. McCoy should have been fired by now. Timeout on the second play. Pick 6 on the second play. Broncos roll. Easy winner, Teddy. Rocking chair, Denver and over.
Yeah, and by the way, Mike McCoy did just get fired this morning. Byron Leftwich. Yeah. Which is second straight year. Second year in a row that McCoy's been fired mid-season as the offensive coordinator. He will not get another NFL offensive coordinator job. And certainly last night's performance by Arizona is not a good one for his resume moving forward.
Yes.
That being said, from a point spread perspective, I mean, there was no drama whatsoever last night. It was Denver and over as rocking chair as it gets. Books didn't like the total move. That got steamed up 40.5 up to 42.5. Sidewide wasn't bad. There was two-way action on the game. But bottom line, that was a pretty ugly no-show. But we know the first-time head coaches, the rookie head coaches, have trouble with those Thursday night games. It's inevitable. That was certainly the case last night. Arizona, once again, did not look prepared. And once again, the Thursday night NFL product, not as good as what they're putting out on Sundays and Mondays.
Very good. That happened 15 minutes ago. I was walking the dog. Excellent news there. I'm surprised it happened so early on the West Coast. 76ers over, 215 up to 221. This Bulls team is horrendous defensively, Teddy. It's going to be a long year for the Bulls. They're going to play a ton of games like this, 127 to 108. And the Winnipeg Jets from 220 up to 210 to 250. They won 4-1.
Yeah, and what did we say yesterday on Sportsbet? I'm going to say the same thing today, and we'll say the same thing next week. And maybe the week after. Early on in the NBA season, do not be fading these totals moves. They're as sharp can be. The one big totals move last night, what it gets steamed up, 4 points, 6 points, and he, wire-to-wire winner. They had it right. 235 combined between the Bulls and Sixers flies over the total with room to spare. The early season NBA total moves are spot on. They're good to follow. They're not good to fade. That won't be the case a month or two from now. But right now, don't step in front of the NBA total moves, in my opinion.
Sixers covered, but didn't get the money in the first quarter. Remember, they had that great run last year, ATS, in the first quarter. They got it in the first game. They didn't get it last night. That was like 41 to 38 at the end of the first quarter. And that one also bad for the books. At William Hill, can you believe this? They tweeted it out last night. In March, the Red Sox were 12-1 to win the World Series. Oh, my God. And now, to me, they got to be a big favorite to win it all. They take out a team that wins 103 games and 100 games, and they run right through. They're 5-0 on the road in the playoffs, Teddy, and they just win 4 in a row against the Astros, take out the defending champs.
Yeah, the Red Sox will be chalk over the Dodgers. They will be big chalk over the Brewers. But regardless, who comes out of the National League, Boston will be the favorite, and the sports books in town likely to be rooting against the Red Sox. There's a fair bit of liability considering that they had the best record in the regular season, took a ton of money in the future books from day one this year. Boston going to be a liability for the sports books moving forward, and we could see some shading in the World Series lines and or odds as a result, depending on how much liability the books actually have, given from book to book.
Bad bets was Arizona last night, 2.5 down to 1. Islanders under 6 down to 5.5. Beat the Kings 7-2. Bruins over 5.5 to 6. 3-2 final there. Pros versus the Joes. What do you have, NFL friend?
Sure. So looking at the early, well, of course I just scrolled down too far. Looking at the early numbers, and again, this is what we try to do on Friday morning. I try to get a sense of who are the Joes on, who are the pros on. Professional bettors versus the amateur bettors, and it's pretty clear. The pros this week are definitely betting the Lions. They've already bet the Lions. That's up to -3 at Miami. Detroit coming off a bye. They like the spot. They don't trust the Dolphins one iota. The pros have bet the Vikings. Minnesota opened 3. That's been bet up to 3.5 against the Jets, moving off that key number. That was all wise guy money. and the 49ers team that has attracted, I think the wise guys they're betting against the Rams just about every week right now. Cash back-to-back tickets. There was money against the Rams each of the last 2 weeks. We're seeing that again this week. Sharps think LA overvalued. Money coming on San Fran down to 9.5. When it comes to the public side of the equation, you already know who the public likes. They like the teams who scored a bunch of points last week. And it's pretty well, I mean, you can go on and on down the line. It's all good offenses. The Joes supporting the Chargers, the Vikings, the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Bucks, and of course the Falcons on Monday Night Football. We'll talk about more about that on Monday. But the offensive juggernauts, those are the teams that Joes have fallen in love with. And many of them we're seeing every week, sort of Chiefs, Patriots at the top of the list.
All right, here we go. Let's rock and roll. Chargers up to 7. The last week this line was 3. 7-45 against the god-awful Titans. It was a horror show against the Ravens. 11 sacks, 10 completions. Now, I talked to Nigel Seeley, who lives in London. He was in town, and I just texted him earlier. They are concerned there. Number one, the first game went under last week because we got back-to-back games in Wembley. They've had a lot of rain. There was a storm this morning. You saw the weather last week. So maybe it's supposed to stay away and cooperate this weekend, but they are concerned about the field conditions. And remember that when looking at this game and also next week when it's the Eagles and the Jags. So you have that angle and a big move here at the look-ahead line since the Chargers ran out the Browns and the Titans looked so bad. The other thing is, we always talked about this with Dave Malinsky, our old friend. What is the proper move if you're going to London? You saw the Raiders go late. They got their butts kicked. Jacksonville knows, I guess Jacksonville perfected it because they go every year. They decided to go. I guess the move is to get out there early.
Yeah, the move is to get out to where you're going early and acclimate to the time change and acclimate to the circumstances. Now, for a normal NFL road game, they're not leaving earlier in the week. The Chargers, for example, this last week, they didn't fly back to L.A. They stayed in Cleveland for a couple of days and they flew over to London. Good move. The markets have responded to that. But the earlier you get there, the earlier it tends to be a better thing if you can avoid the distractions once you're there, because you get into London, let's go sightseeing here, and the focus isn't always on practicing. So I like to see teams have a couple of practices, then fly over the pond and get there fairly early. The Chargers in that spot here. And of course, Chargers are in a groove right now, Pauly. Phillip Rivers, quote, "We know we're in kind of a groove right now. We want to make sure we don't do anything to stop that. It's going to be a great game against a tough team. We need to focus on the game and not all the stuff going around it. It's a long way to go, but it might be the last time I make this trip over here. We got a chance to get to 5-2. So this is a big game. The other stuff is fun to talk about playing in London. We got to make sure we get the win and get to 5-2. And certainly when you talk about a team that got sacked 11 times in 40 offensive snaps last week, there are some concerns there for Tennessee on the offensive side of the football. It's a Titans offense now that has scored 0 touchdowns in the last 8 quarters. And you read some of the quotes, they feel like they should be able to fix it, but it's almost like an Arizona situation. They don't know they're going to be able to fix it. And there are concerns at the coordinator position with the Tennessee Titans offensively. When you don't score a touchdown for 8 quarters and you're facing a good passer, even without Bosa, Melvin Ingram was a monster, and the Chargers get after the QB. This is not going to be an easy matchup for Tennessee, but Chargers just want to win and get out of town. Winning by margin, winning by more than a touchdown hasn't always been their MO.
Yep, good point there. I like LaFleur coming in, the OC coming over from the Rams, but it hasn't worked out. Tennessee 2-7 ATS pre-bye week game since 2008. If you want to do, I know it's a new coaching staff, but if you want to play with that as well. I've lived here since 2000. I think the Bears win on Sunday because they're begging you to bet the Patriots. This line stinks, and there's Bears money. Patriots are down to 2.5 and 49 the total. The Patriots are back 38, 43 points in the last 3 games. Great running game with Michelle. Edelman back, working Gordon in the mix as well. Throw out Trubisky, what he did against the Bucks. It's the worst defense in the league. Guys were wide open. They gave up 380 passing yards to Osweiler. I know it's hard to win there in September and October because of the heat. The tackling sucked. I know Mac got banged up in that game as well. Why is this line only 2.5? And you have a great stat on Belichick against quarterbacks that are 25 or younger.
Sure. Why is the line only 2.5? Because the wise guys are betting Chicago. That's why the line's 2.5. Open 3. We looked like it might move to 3.5. It's gone the other way. Why are they betting Chicago? Well,
Yeah.
the Patriots 0-2 straight up, 0-2 against the spread on the road this year. And both the losses were pretty ugly. Lost at Jacksonville, a loss to Detroit. Not New England's best football. Now, they've had a chance the last couple of weeks against some weak defenses. Bears don't have a weak defense. Even if Khalil Mack doesn't play, the Bears don't have a weak defense. They played a bad game last week in Miami, no question. And they wore down in the heat and ugly fourth quarter and overtime and, on and on down the line. But it was not a Chicago defense that the betting markets are saying these guys can't stop anyone. They can. Of course, the Mitch Trubisky factor. You talk about that stat. Trubisky's quote, I think a lot of guys are hungry. We're just eager for that next opportunity to prove ourselves. Not really to the outside, just to prove it to each other. What type of team we are, just a hungry team that wants to close out games and be a really dominant force. But, Max hurt. And, of course, the Patriots. How about this stat? This is the one you were talking about. 58-17 straight up under Belichick on the road. That's winning 3 out of 4 on the road against QBs that are 25 and younger. Trubisky has not shown to me, and forget that Tampa game. He's not shown to me that he's capable against a tricky defense of making the reads and the throws. And, of course, we saw last week the coaching staff didn't trust Trubisky after he threw the end zone pick that cost them the game. And then the play calling from Nagy and company thereafter in the fourth quarter was conservative, which was a big part of the reason why the Bears ended up losing. They don't trust their QB. The QB and the Patriots defense, despite their concerns this year, has a good history against younger quarterbacks and confusing them. Really intriguing matchup. But I'm with you. They're begging you to take New England.
Yeah.
And they
you're right, but I disagree with the rationale, because who are the Bears? Let's look at the resume. Now, it's a number 1 defense according to Football Outsiders, but you lost to Miami. You beat Arizona by 2 on the road. They're the worst team in the league. You beat Seattle at home, and you gave away a game against the Packers, and the Packers can't stop a nosebleed. So you blew that game too, and Nagy went conservative. And that, you mentioned it, the road issues, and you're right, but that team doesn't exist anymore. When earlier in the season, if you doubled Gronk, you could shut him down. You can't do it now. They've added Gordon. Edelman's back off suspension. They found something with Sony Michel. Hogan's had some nice games. So I can't believe it. It seems like a gift. Plus that Belichick line, that stat you had as well. So tough game, but rarely do you see the Patriots. Go ahead.
Well, it's funny because you talk about how Chicago could be much worse. The Bears could be 5-0 right now if they had held on to a pair of fourth quarter leads. They had the Packers on the ropes. They had the Dolphins on the ropes, and they lost both of those games. But for as much as they could be 0-5, they could be 5-0 right now. So the Bears, there's the wise guys have liked Chicago from day one this year. That hasn't changed coming into this ballgame.
All right, Redskins and Cowboys, good matchup. Redskins at home, 141.5. Could be more Cowboy fans there. Big deal there. Snyder screwing around the fans, moving their seats around, and a ton of empty seats in some of those home games already. The Cowboys, off the big win last week, they finally played an over. They had a 12-2 underrun. How about this tweet from Dan Steinberg at DC Sports Blog? Redskins won last week. They're 1-1 in their last 2 games, 2-2 in their last 4, 3-3 in their last 6, 5-5 in their last 10, 6-6 in their last 12, 7-7 in their last 14, 10-10 in their last 20, 16-16-1 in their last 33, 18-18-1 in their last 37, 28-28-1 over their last 57. That's unbelievable.
Now that's, and it's funny because the blurb's going to say the Redskins lack consistency, and that's probably not true. They're maybe the most consistent team in the NFL because they're always playing 500 football, which means you bet on Washington off a loss. You bet against them off a win. 1-7 straight up their last 8 wins. Obviously, this is a game that they will need to win straight up in order to cover the point spread. Concerns for Washington at the running back position this week. The injuries continue to mount. Adrian Peterson, not 100%. Chris Thompson, we don't know if he's going to be able to go at all. And considering Alex Smith's struggles, Smith has not been great. He's not been anywhere near as good as he was in Kansas City early on with the Redskins. 23rd in the NFL, 241 passing yards per game, less effective running than he's been, only 60 yards on 27 carries. He's been sacked 12 times. I haven't seen Alex Smith really click with this offense just yet. And of course, when you talk about series history right here, this has been a very one-sided series. Dallas has won 5 straight times in D.C., 8-2 straight up the last 10 meetings against the Redskins.
All right, very good. I want Garrett as a dog. I don't want him as a favorite. And Garrett is also, it's crazy, one of the few coaches, they showed that a couple weeks ago on Sunday Night Football, one of the few coaches who's better on the road as opposed to home, but they're off a great performance against Jacksonville. See if they can do it again. Although you have that tweet there with the Redskins, we got to move fast. Sunday Night Football, been flexed in. Great matchup, KC 5.5, 58 against the Bengals. Can the offensive line slow down Dunlap and Atkins, who've combined for 10 sacks? Take that away, protect Mahomes. Should go up and down the. What is wrong with this Cincinnati defense, Teddy?
Cincinnati's defense? What about the Chiefs' defense?
We know that, Chiefs though. Yes.
Yeah, dead last in yards per game, number 27 in points allowed for Kansas City, which makes it at times difficult to lay points with a team that doesn't defend enough to get stops. That being said, they gave up 43 points last week and still covered the number. But the Bengals defense, they're getting off to these fast starts since he's outscored their foes 45-17 in the first quarter, but it hasn't really carried over. We've seen them get picked apart by the better passing teams. Vontaze Burfict off suspension, and of course, immediately getting criticized for late hits and dirty play and all of that. But the Bengals defense, for as good as Cincinnati's been this season, I got to call Cincy's defense something of a disappointment. Certainly was last week, blowing that game against the Steelers.
I got the Football Outsiders rankings here. I mean, this is unbelievable. Cincinnati's 25th in defense. You're getting close to Tampa, Atlanta territory. That's ridiculous. But KC, this is the worst run defense for 2 years now, and we'll see if they can slow. That's the game plan, right? Feed Mixon, run the ball, keep the offense off the field, because I was so impressed with that game out of Mahomes and the Chiefs. They hardly had the ball in the second half, but still scored in every possession. And Brady had to be phenomenal, and he still almost won the damn game.
Sure. And it's worth noting, when it comes to defensive injuries, they're piling up for Cincy. Leading tackler, Nick Vigil, he's expected to miss the next 4 weeks. The cornerback, Darqueze Dennard, he's likely out this week. And there's still talk that Burfict could get suspended off his rough play last week. I don't think that's going to happen, but the Bengals defense will not be at 100% against the most explosive offense in the NFL in 2018. I don't want the dog here, Pauly. And once again, in a Chiefs game, I do not want the under. It's favorite and over if I'm going to get involved.
All right. I lean under in the London game. 45. I have 46 in pocket. It's 45. You take it away, whatever you want to go with.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go with that. I mean, we talked about the issues on defense for Kansas City and Cincinnati. Given that we have a Chiefs offense that continues to put up points in bunches, given that we have a Chiefs defense that continues to be unable to stop good offenses, given the Bengals can chuck the football around, given their defensive concerns, we can expect touchdowns in this one. Let me get the game number right here. We're talking 463, 464. Bears and the Bengals and the Chiefs over the total, 58.5, the prevailing number. Yeah, we saw a shootout last week with Kansas City. We're going to see a shootout again. Yep. Chiefs and Bengals over. That's the play of the day.
Yep, very good, Teddy. Where are my numbers here? Did I misplace them? Yeah. Tampa 5-0 to the over. Chargers 5-1 to the over. San Francisco and Green Bay 5-1 to the over. Atlanta 5-1 to the over. So some good numbers there, and I agree with you on that one. Should be some fireworks. What a game last night with the Lakers and the Blazers. That was warp speed pace. That was bananas. We're back Monday to recap everything. We'll know the World Series matchup. We'll go through the NFL schedule. Well, and a duffel bag boy update too, hopefully, who's won over $1 million in Vegas the last 2 weeks. Low Shack in the Bank coming up next. Tell your friends, Sportsbit, baby. All the news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. Have a good weekend.